Joining us in the Ukraine Today studio is Stefan Romanhiv. He's the chair of the Australian Federation of Ukrainian Organisations. Welcome. Thank you for coming in. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the Australia-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. You're just finalising the start of the project now. Can you tell us a bit more about what you hope to achieve?
I think the relationships between Australia and Ukraine are far stronger than they were many years ago. The Chamber will give the opportunity to build bilateral relations. Obviously there's interest from Australia in investing in Ukraine. There's interest in Ukraine from Ukraine investing in Australia. During President Poroshenko's visit to Australia in December last year, we held a round table which was facilitated by the European Australian Business Council. There are a lot of ideas about how we go forward, and this is now the realisation of the plan. We in a sense have a bit of a saying going from rhetoric to action, and this is action.
And what sort of sectors are the Australian investors interested in Ukraine?
At the moment, what we're doing a lot of scoping work at the moment. In the next 24 hours or so, we'll have a round table here to look at how Ukrainian and Australian business people look at particular sectors. Obviously, there are sectors, the obvious ones now, the resource sector. The resource sector is an interesting one for Ukraine and Australia in terms of uranium, in terms of coal. The IT sector is a very, very strong sector. But we also see things from a different perspective. There's a lot of talk in Ukraine about reform and going into the EU and criteria and so on. There's a lot of IT in terms of that we can help with, but also intellectual property in terms of processes and programs that are in place in Australia today, which can be on-sold to Ukraine, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. The opportunity's there, we just have to open up the doors.
Mm-hmm. And with these opportunities, what sort of concerns do you think the Australian investors have in investing in Ukraine? You mentioned, say, corruption and reforms. Is that a major concern?
I think so. I think what we have to do is we have to give people confidence. You know, the Australian Federation of Ukrainian Organisations, and also I'm General Secretary of the Ukrainian World Congress, we've taken a position there's probably two things that have to happen. On one end, we've got Russian aggression in the east, and we have to deal with that, and humanitarian aid and support, and that's one part of Ukraine which we can't let go of, and we really have to work on that. But on the other hand, there's economic development, and that economic development will only happen when you get some confidence, and that confidence will only be built when people see, everybody talks about reform. I think we need to change the word reform, because we've had 20 years of reform, or nearly 25 years of reform.
Yeah.
What we need is change, real change. And people need to have confidence. Part of that, we're having two bilateral conferences, we're planning one in Melbourne, Australia, and one in Kiev, hopefully by the end of the year or early into next year. And part of the streams there will be looking at things like governance, things like anti-corruption, things like doing business with the West. And again, I think they're important things that will give people confidence that ultimately you can invest in Ukraine. There are opportunities, you just have to identify them.
And you think the Australians that you've spoken to back at home, are they confident that these reforms are a positive step, or do you think they're still pretty slow and maybe not happening fast enough?
Look, I think it's like anything else. If you invest in anything, in anywhere, you want some guarantee, you want some assurance. Obviously, one thing I think we've been able to do is to say there is action. In other words, something is happening. Is it happening fast enough? Or we want to see it happen faster. And every investor, and the worst thing you do is have government-to-government business dealings, because government-to-government is a lot of bureaucracy. Investors, they are playing with their own money. Shareholders are playing with their own money. They will do the due diligence, and if the due diligence is not here, they won't invest. So it's in the interests of Ukrainian business and Australian business to make sure due diligence is done, governance is in place, anti-corruption is dealt with, and I think the opportunities here are great.